In the conversation nationally about free speech, censorship, people are focused on this Alex Jones thing, which I think has very little to do with those topics. When lurking in the background, I think is much scarier information when it comes to the future of free speech and censorship of the media in this country. And it's not coming from a tech company, it's not even coming directly from a politician, although it is certainly being inspired by them. And that is as a result of a new poll into whether different populations of Americans think that the president should be allowed to simply shut down media outlets if he wants to. And the reason I'm worried is that 43% of self-identified Republicans said that they believe the president should have the authority to close news outlets engaged in bad behavior. Only 36% disagreed with that statement. So that means it's not quite a majority of Republicans, but it is the plurality. 43% think that Donald Trump, if he wants to, should be able to shut down an entire media organization for bad behavior, which I'm sure he would define very specifically.
Yeah, what exactly does bad behavior mean?
Probably being fake news, if I had to guess.
Probably, and then as you said, who assesses this level of bad behavior and what constitutes and where's the line? There's always a line when it comes to something where things need to be cut off. One thing exists, the next thing doesn't. Again, I'll give you another TYT Sports crossover moment. In the NCAA tournament, there's teams on the bubble, and there's teams that make it in and teams that don't, any kind of these championship things. So there's a line that has to be crossed and a decision has to be made. And usually it's made on terms of numbers, strength of schedule, things like that. So when you have someone who's who's deeply analytical and is a deep thinker like the president is, it must be a really simple line that he would put in place to make sure that the ones who are exercising bad behavior will be shut down. And all the thousands and thousands of people that work for these organizations, who cares about jobs? Who cares about, more importantly, freedom of the press and holding government officials accountable?
Yeah, and
who cares?
I have some follow-up information. This is both, I guess, good news. This is good news, terrifying news, which is less common than good news, bad news. It's good news and oh my God, what is going on? Because what we just talked about, that was general, should he have the power to shut down media outlets? But what about when we're not talking about general things? What about when we're talking about specific outlets? When asked if Trump should close down specific outlets, including CNN, The Washington Post, and The New York Times, nearly a quarter of Republicans agreed and 49% disagreed. So that's your good news. Half of Republicans don't think that Trump should literally close down The New York Times right now. But 1 out of 4 Republicans think yes. CNN is not just fake news. It's not just that I'm not gonna watch it. Trump should close it down unilaterally right now. And that 23% of Republicans think that they care about the Constitution. They think that they understand what this country is actually about. When they are, like, we've been calling this movement either fascist or fascist adjacent. That quarter, that's beyond even what some fascists probably believed in terms of direct control being taken over media. I'm sure some fascists in Europe probably thought, a bit of press might not be a bad thing. But this quarter think that effectively there should be no limits on Donald Trump's power. That if he thinks that something is fake news, if he thinks that it's unfair, he should be able to shut it down. Doesn't matter if it's a newspaper that's been operating for hundreds of years or so. It doesn't matter if it's literally CNN, which for all of its problems, does not deserve being shut down by the president. But they think that he should be able to do that.
It's what happens when you allow people, or at least when these people allow someone to take over and control their minds. It's a cult-like following, as we've said many times. Many people have said this is not anything new. So when you allow someone to chant to you every time and tell you that the reality of the situation is not, and then they just go with it, I would like follow-up questions to be asked. I know there's a poll, so these type of things aren't asked. So once they say, oh yeah, it should be able to shut down any news outlets he deems to be behaving badly, or whatever the hell the term was. She asks, okay, so do you think the previous president should have unilateral ability to shut down all media outlets that have said anything negative about him? Or maybe just shut down specific programs. Do you think he should be able to shut down Hannity's show? Do you think he should be able to shut down Laura Ingram's show?
What if she's
President
acting
Obama?
badly?
Do you think he should be able to? And they go, well, what? That's fascism. That's a dictatorship. I can't believe, what are you talking about? He was a president I didn't like.
Yeah. And by the way, I want to think there was so much for
the logical thought process has to be fleshed out, is all I'm saying.
It does, and it won't, because there's no logic. So I alluded to the Alex Jones thing earlier, which is not strictly about the First Amendment or anything like that. This is a private corporation choosing not to host a person's content in the same way that, as Jules pointed out on the show yesterday, InfoWars refuses to host his podcast. Seems unfair. I personally think CNN is censoring me by not allowing me to have a show. Now again, that is not actually about the First Amendment. It has nothing to do with the First Amendment. But this very much does, because the First Amendment is a protection from government interference in these things. And they are saying specifically not, I think CNN shouldn't exist anymore. It's, I think the government should shut down media outlets. So we could not have a more stark comparison between something that literally has nothing to do with the First Amendment and a direct assault on the fundamental foundation of the First Amendment, with a quarter of Republicans who hold all government power in our country right now thinking that screw the First Amendment. They couldn't even get through the first. How much respect do you think they have for the rest of the amendments if they couldn't get through the first without saying, I don't like it, I don't like it?
He's convinced them that he's not the government, that the people that they voted for are not the government. Somehow they can be against the government and still in favor of the guy who's the head of the executive branch of the government.
Yeah. By the way, and we've been sort of linking it, I guess, implicitly to Donald Trump. That is not insane, because 48% of, I believe it's Republicans, said that the news media is the enemy of the American people. Just 28% disagreed, so we're done with that. That's simply the case for the next few decades. They think that the media is literally their enemy. So good luck convincing them of basic facts for policies going forward. Nearly 4 out of 5 think that the mainstream media treats President Trump unfairly. Not that they treat him negatively, but that how negative they are is unfair, it's not warranted. That, I think, at least we can have a bit of a conversation about, but the idea that the media is literally their enemy is insane, and it is effectively the default position of Republicans in this country right now. By the way, and just to bear this in mind, 12% of Democrats and 21% of independents also think that the president should have the authority to close news outlets engaged in bad behavior. Those numbers are far higher than they should be. Now, some of those independents are not actually independent. They are Republicans who don't like calling themselves Republicans, but 12% of Democrats too. Now, the disapproval of that idea is far higher. 74% of Democrats think that he should not have that power. But any number, anything above 0 is not acceptable. Also, that same 12% of Democrats do think that the news media is the enemy of the American people. So I don't know what's going on in our country. I don't know what we're supposed to do.
I'm gonna go with these people who also call themselves Republicans or Democrats that are on that 12% of the smaller numbers. I think in general, I mean, they get the polling or they look at it however these polls are conducted, and they go, I'm just gonna troll this.
Maybe that scares me too in a different way. Thank you so much for watching this video from The Damage Report. Please don't forget to like the video and also to subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as soon as new videos become available. To hear even more about both this topic and other issues not being covered nearly enough by the mainstream media, you're gonna wanna tune in every morning to our full hour-long show. That's at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, available on the TYT Network channel on YouTube TV.